All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a huge cryptographic battle, ECC versus RSA. Now, this is really the story of an aging king, a reigning champion being challenged by this faster, way more efficient contender that, as you'll see, ended up powering our entire modern mobile world.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the king of crypto, then look at the weight of the crown, see how a new curve emerges, and then get to the showdown. After that, we'll see how it's all about securing the mobile world and finish up with some really important cryptography's fine print. Basically, we're going to see why the old guard started to stumble and how this new approach just completely changed the game for, well, pretty much everything.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the king of crypto. We're talking about establishing the gold standard. And to do that, you've got to understand the algorithm that absolutely dominated digital security for decades, RSA. For the longest time, it was the undisputed champion. You know, there's this great quote from Bruce Schneier. Good cryptographers rely on peer review to separate the good algorithms from the bad. And that right there is why the world came to trust RSA. It wasn't some secret sauce its creators cooked up and said, hey, trust us. No way. They published it for everyone to see. It was openly, intensely scrutinized by experts all over the globe, and its security was built on a math problem that was, surprisingly simple to understand, but just brutally difficult to actually solve.
So what is this hard problem? It's all about factoring huge numbers. The whole security of RSA hinges on something called a one-way function. And here's a great way to think about it. Imagine mixing two cans of paint. It's super easy to mix yellow and blue to get green, right? But now try to unmix it. Try to perfectly separate that green paint back into pure yellow and pure blue. It's practically impossible. That's the core idea. And this breaks it down perfectly. Step 1, you pick two absolutely enormous prime numbers. Step 2, you multiply them together to get your public key. Super easy for a computer. But step 3, trying to go backwards? To take that final product and figure out the two original primes you started with, that's the part that is extremely hard. I mean, a computer can do the multiplication in a blink of an eye, but asking even the most powerful supercomputers on the planet to reverse it, we're talking centuries, maybe longer. That difficulty, that's the lock on your digital life.
Okay, on to Section 2, the weight of the crown. This is all about why the king of crypto started to stumble. Because, as computers just kept getting faster and faster, this really elegant solution, well, it started to show its age. Its very foundation started to crack under a huge problem of scale.
See, the problem is this. As our computers get exponentially more powerful, the only way to keep RSA's hard problem actually hard is to just keep making the keys bigger and bigger and bigger still. The core issue is that the difficulty of factoring doesn't grow as fast as our ability to build ridiculously powerful computers. We're basically in an arms race where RSA is falling behind.
And this really drives the point home. You see this trend right here. What was considered a totally secure key size, say, 10 years ago, is now considered pretty weak, maybe even breakable. So to get that same level of security today, you need a key that is just massively larger. And that means it's way more expensive for your computer to actually use.
Yeah, we're talking about keys that are 2048, even 3072 bits long just to stay safe. And generating and using keys that big, it's slow. It eats up a ton of processing power. And that right there became a massive problem for all those small battery-powered devices that were, about to literally take over the world. Think about your phone.
So that brings us to Section 3, a new curve emerges. This is the rise of a much more efficient challenger, Elliptic Curve Cryptography. Just as RSA's weaknesses were becoming really obvious, ECC showed up, and it was built on a completely different and frankly a much, much harder mathematical problem.
Okay, I know, that definition sounds super academic and complicated, so let's just ignore that for a second and get to the core idea. Instead of factoring prime numbers, ECC is all about points on a special kind of curve. Imagine you have a starting point on this curve. It's really easy for a computer to take that point and hop it along the curve a secret number of times to land on a final point. But here's the trick. The path isn't a straight line. It's all over the place. So if I just show you the start and end points, it's almost impossible for you to figure out how many hops it took to get there. That is the one-way function for ECC. And let me tell you, it is a way harder problem to solve than factoring. And this is the absolute key takeaway. Because the underlying math problem in ECC is just so much fundamentally harder than factoring, you get a huge benefit. A harder problem means you can get the exact same level of security, but with a much, much smaller key. And that leads us right into Section 4, the showdown, ECC versus RSA. Let's put the old guard and the new contender head-to-head on the stuff that really matters for our modern devices. We're talking key size and performance. And honestly, the results are, well, they're staggering. And boom! This chart says it all. This is the knockout punch. To get the same security strength you'd get from a huge 3072-bit RSA key, you only need a tiny 256-bit ECC key. Think about that. That's not just a little better, it's a whole different league. The ECC key is more than 10 times smaller. It's just wildly more efficient.
So this massive difference in key size, it translates directly into performance. You can see it here. Key size for RSA? Very large. For ECC, small and efficient. That means the computational cost for RSA is high, while for ECC it's low. This makes things like generating a digital signature way faster with ECC. For any device that's running on a battery, this is a revolutionary advantage. We're talking longer battery life and websites that just feel faster and snappier. It's a huge deal.
Which brings us to Section 5, securing the mobile world. And really, we need to understand why ECC's efficiency was such a revolution. This wasn't just some minor, incremental improvement. No, this was the key, the enabling technology that unlocked the secure, fast, on-the-go internet that we literally use every single day. So who uses ECC? Well, pretty much everything. Your smartphone, your smartwatch, all your smart home gadgets, they all rely on it. It is the reason your phone can instantly create a secure HTTPS connection to a website without you even noticing a dip in your battery. It's why modern web standards like TLS 1.3 basically demand it. Let's be clear, ECC is, without a doubt, the cryptography that holds our modern connected world together.
But there's always a but, isn't there? That brings us to our final section, cryptography's fine print. Because even with all this revolutionary power, there are crucial warnings. In the world of high-stakes crypto, there are no magic bullets. And all that efficiency from ECC, it comes with its own set of really important responsibilities and some serious potential pitfalls.
And that Schneier quote from earlier is even more critical when we talk about ECC. The very same mathematical complexity that makes ECC so powerful and efficient also makes it way, way harder to implement correctly. We're talking about a situation where one tiny mistake, a subtle bug in the code, a weak random number generator, can create a massive, catastrophic vulnerability that could just leak the entire private key. The stakes are incredibly high. And here's the really important thing to grasp. With RSA, you basically just need to find two big prime numbers. But with ECC, you can't just cook up your own parameters. You can't just roll your own crypto. You have to use carefully chosen, standardized curves that have been publicly torn apart and reviewed by experts to make sure they're secure. Choosing the wrong curve or one that hasn't been vetted could completely destroy your security. It could even create a hidden backdoor. That's why we have to rely on transparent, peer-reviewed standards, like the curves recommended by NIST, to make sure we're all building on a solid, secure foundation. So, in the end, ECC's incredible efficiency was the perfect solution for the mobile revolution. It gracefully took the heavy crown from RSA. But the cryptographic arms race never, ever stops. And as we look to the future, there's a new challenger on the horizon, quantum computers. They threaten to break both RSA and ECC with terrifying ease. Which forces us all to ask that final question: what will the next revolution in our digital security actually look like?